Hello, welcome to Coven Cocktails, Tarot Pull, and Spells. We've got a lot in store for you today. Danielle and I are the co-creatrixes of Medusa'sl Circle. I inhabit the crone energy, fully in monster mode, here to bring the planet into chaos, but the kind of chaos that's like love and cute. You get it. In all of my spare time, it feels like I write and I give readings, astrological and tarot readings, obviously for the collective now, but I also love giving them to y'all one-on-one. Danielle, who are you?
I'm Sanielle. I am a tarot reader, a magical practitioner. I also write on good old Substack, and I am very passionate about ending capitalism and colonialism and dreaming of worlds where those things don't exist.
So lovely.
Yes.
Well, first things first, I have a special cocktail that I've made for you.
Yes. Tell me what you're drinking.
Yes. So it is the full moon in Cancer, and the moon is at home in Cancer, and she's very homey and she's like very cozy. And Cancer is affiliated with plants that have like white or silvery type leaves or petals. And there's a lot of different ones that you can look up on the internet. There's a little dragon fruit. You can do anise. There's all sorts of things, but I put together a take because it's the new year and we all just probably drank a little bit of champagne. And so I did the French 75. It's a take on the French 75 in my little panda cup. So the French 75 is a champagne cocktail. I'm going to post the full recipe so y'all can check it out on all of the things. But it has a little bit of lemon juice to cleanse away all the bad energy, all the crappy energy that we're done with from 2022. I chose a little pomegranate juice, another New Year's tradition to invite good fortune into my life. This is where you can have a lot of fun with it, where you can do the dragon fruit, clover, anise seed. All of these things are really lovely. And I like the anise thing. If you want, you could like booze it up even more and do like absinthe or pastis. And then I shake that up a little bit with some gin and then top it with champagne, or in this case, La Marca Prosecco. Please sponsor us. And I'm creating this little cocktail to ring in the new year and invite all of the good things into my life. How about you, Sanielle? You got one in your palm?
I have maybe the very distant bastard child of that drink. I used what I had access to, which was some Bombay gin. And then I added some creme de violette and then lime juice. And I don't have sparkling wine and I live in Utah. And today the liquor stores are closed. And so I just used with what I had, which was lime liqueur.
I love it. I love a bastard child too, because it's all different and we're all different, and the way that we experience the different lunations is going to hit us differently. And I think you bring up a delightful part of magic that took me a second to kind of latch onto, which is that like use what you have. Don't like go to the store and break the bank and make sure you have every single correct thing. There's so many different elements that, I like always try and look at what I have sitting around in my drawers before I like go out and purchase more things.
Yeah.
And in that you have like a discovery of the different like elements that you can bring in and enjoy. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love a bastard child.
Yes.
We have a few tarot cards that we wanted to pull for y'all.
Yes. What
Um,
deck are you pulling from?
so I am pulling from the Living Altar, which is wow, God, her name on Instagram is Bimbo Yaga. Delightful. Ilva, we actually took a class with her a couple years ago. She's a really brilliant witch. Her and one of her friends made this beautiful deck that is it's like it's on my Pluto altar because this shit is like witchy. And I'm just gonna ask the deck today about how we can take care of ourselves. This is a very healing full moon. And it feels like Chani was telling us today that it feels like healing, but in a way that's radical, which I love because all I ever want is radical healing for myself and the collective. Oh, look at the cat.
Yeah, Nux showing off his butthole.
Thank you, Nux. What's up? What did you eat today? How you doing?
He's gonna answer you.
Yeah, oh, I love it. All right. So let's see how we can bring some care into our lives. Ooh, I love this. So I got the Elderhood card,
Ooh.
and this card to me, just from first glance, is like inviting in mentors and inviting in people who are literally older than you or perhaps just wiser. Sometimes that gets mixed up with age, but it's inviting in folks who are have been on the pathway that you've been on a little bit longer perhaps, or they've simply just like put in a little bit more time or effort, and they're like ready to take you along and give you like the advice that you need, not the advice that like you don't want. Like they're elders, they're smart enough to know when you don't need advice. um but they're ready to like offer you their wisdom as well as the comfort of knowing, like when I think of elders, I also think of our ancestors a little bit and how they're kind of like, oh yeah, I've been through that messy stuff before. And of course we're at a unique, period of time, but there's also a sense of all of the human emotions have been felt before. um there's this beautiful guidebook that Ilva offers, and it uh she has these lovely spells that she puts in them, and I think it's just worth straight up reading because they're just so delightful. Give me a second. So her spell for the elderhood card is: there are no words for the way this feels. I've spent hours and lifetimes mastering mountains, only to realize in the end that I am their peaks and valleys. Let me rest in the celebration of all I have accomplished. I am comforted in the pride of what will come from the seeds I have sown and the fruits I have harvested. My gift at this time is witness. Mine is the compassionate gaze of understanding. My altar speaks. Let be what was, let rise what is, and celebrate always the mystery with faithless devotion.
I love that. I was thinking too that, I think that we talk so much about our inner child, but time is cyclical. And so, how do we honor the elder that is part of us already, the elder that will be, regardless of how aged we become? There is an elder within ourselves that we should honor as much as like the inner child. And so, how do we care for that part of ourself that we have yet to like meet, but who is likely already influencing who we are today?
Yeah.
And so how do we care for ourselves in a way that is caring for our future self and honoring our future ways of being?
I love that. I feel like when you're really going through a hard time, when I've done this, when I've been just like in the crapper, like going through a breakup or whatever, like, and it just feels like there's like, you just have suffering and grief ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times where I've just been like, okay, I'm just taking the steps that I need to take in order to like this time next year to be in a better place, to be happier. Like I know that I won't always feel so heavy. And there's like a very like concrete way that I've been like, okay, this time next year I'm going to be a little bit happier. I have not thought beyond that. It's hard to think about the future. But
Right. Yes. Yes.
but it is interesting to think about like taking care of our elder self as well as taking care of our inner child. I love that.
Yeah. I think even like thinking, like you were saying, thinking ahead, like, okay, this time next year, I'm not going to feel this way. I recently had a procedure done and I was like, I know that this is going to rock me. And so it was like, okay, how can I take care of myself in this moment so that that self can navigate this impending shift with more ease? And so maybe not even thinking like the Sanielle that I will be tomorrow is older and hopefully wiser than the Sanielle that I am today. So maybe not getting so stuck on elder as aged, but just as a little elder than I am now. I don't know.
No, I love it. I mean, now you're just reminding me of like, also when I know that I'm in like a depressive slump, I go to the store and this might have happened recently, and I go and just clear out all the what I call depression food. It's really easy to make food. It's food that like doesn't take a lot of effort because that kind of goes out the window for me. That like ability to be productive when I'm in like low mood. And that's like just one little simple way that feel free to use it, y'all. Get your depression food if you need it. It's winter. But that's like something I feel like I've done things like that. And I've actually like thought to myself, like, thank you, past Ruth. Like you did it. As I like pop the ramen in the microwave. I'm like, we did it.
Yes. Yeah, I also think of like that meme that's going around because it's like New Year's, and so we've got like the resolution vibes, and it's reasons to go to the gym that aren't patriarchal beauty standards, and it's like outrun the cops, and I think about like future Samuel might have some like tough circumstances, so maybe I can nurture my body now so that if I have to, do some Hunger Games shit in a couple years, I'll be a little better equipped for that. So,
I love that.
Just trying to be realistic.
Inviting care, but caring actually for your elder. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. Do you have a deck that you would like to pull from, Sanielle?
Yes, I have my Modern Spellcaster Tarot. I chose this deck. Well, honestly, this deck has just been speaking to me a lot lately in kind ways and not discouraging ways like some of my other decks. And it has a little bit of like darker themes to it. So, and I think, you and I talked about how we honor the darkness of winter, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a natural state that we move through, we transit through. And so I thought using this deck would honor a little bit of that darkness during the shorter time of the year. And I want to ask the same question.
Nice. I am going to honor the darkness coming out of my cat right now, who I accidentally locked out, and he is upset. So pardon my chair noises and such.
Okay.
Francois heard that Nux is here, so he wanted to say hi. Ooh, cards are flying out.
Yeah. I'll just go with these top two. We don't need a 4-card reading. Okay, so I drew the Strength card. I love this like particular image of the card because the traditional Rider-Waite Coleman Smith, the person in the card has their hands on the mouth of the lion. And so there's these Daniel and the Lion's Den vibes, right? Where your strength comes in moments of like peril or perceived weakness. And I always associate this card with vulnerability, like strength through vulnerability. And especially in this card where I don't know if you can tell, but she's very vulnerable. And she has mastered this like beast that is supposed to cause her harm. And she does it while being so vulnerable. And so I love the strength card because, you know, caring for ourselves can sometimes mean that we have to make ourselves vulnerable. And I think that there's so much pressure to be so like hyper individualistic, to do things on our own. I mean, we come from a generation that at least seems to appreciate therapy much more than previous generations. But I mean, I know that I personally really struggle with appearing vulnerable because there's this idea that vulnerable is the same thing as weakness. And so remembering that making ourselves vulnerable, allowing ourselves to be held by our community is a form of strength. And so in this time when it can really, really suck, like wintertime can really, really suck, that it's like important to remember that we can show up in strength by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable.
Is that a snake at the bottom?
Yes, there is a serpent on land and then a serpent in the water as well. And there's frogs and they're like being drawn towards this light on the water.
Is that like a
So
volcano or it's just a light on the water?
it's just like a fire pit out on the water
Oh yeah. Oh, I love
with
that.
the mountains.
Bringing in that element of fire and water. They're like
Mm-hmm.
objectively the more intense of the elements as opposed to air and earth that are kind of like they let you live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fire and water, on the other hand, like there is like so much intensity in that card. And I love serpents for being an ancient symbol of feminine wisdom. And I
Mm-hmm.
love lions because they're kitties.
Yeah.
Leo vibes. But I love that too. I haven't thought the vulnerability aspect is really interesting, especially in that card. Um, I when I think about strength, I often also think about like how, I mean, there's like that feeling of like dominion that kind of happens when the hands are over the mouth of the lion. And
Mm-hmm.
that's such a like colonizer like
Yeah.
way of looking at it. And I love that she's working with the lion, like they are
Mm-hmm.
cohorts together in this battle.
Yeah.
Um, but also that she's like relying on the strength of the lion as well. There's
Mm-hmm.
a sense of like drawing in care from the creatures around you. Which why do we have pets? um, but I also always think with strength about like rather than the idea of brute strength that like can best a beast, rather than like indulging in that side of it, it's that more sustained strength as well. So it is like I am going to work out a few times a week so that when I need to use my brute strength, I can. When I
Mm-hmm.
have to
Yeah.
outrun the cops, I've got that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it is building sustained strength. And it's like allowing yourself to like, it's like care in the details, care in coming down to like take care of your body, drink enough water, make sure you're like stretching, and that can feel, it does feel like a list because we live in a world that's so obsessed with productivity. And so we see that
Yeah.
as like, these are things you have to do to be productive and good. And rather than seeing it that way, it's like a lovely shift in the mindset to just be like, no, I'm just trying to like increase my strength and stamina.
Mm-hmm.
That was another one of the things on that post was stamina for sex, which I love.
Yes. Yes.
Did you have another card pop out?
I did. This card is a little, it's okay, let's just go for it. It is the Five of Pentacles.
Interesting.
Exactly. The Five of Pentacles to me is all about like rejection, isolation. Okay, but here's a thread I can follow. we are in a season of intense transmission of illness, of sickness, of, we're plunging ahead in this pandemic as if people who are vulnerable don't matter. And so maybe now is the time to think about how we can care for each other by taking steps back. I don't know if this is too much of a reach, but the Five of Pentacles is a hard card. It's like, it is about being shut out. It is about rejection. It's not a pleasant card. The fives are all pretty tough cards. The Five of Cups is about grief. Like, where can we find strength? Not strength, sorry. Where can we find care in removing ourselves from situations? And I think that it's good to be mindful of the fact that in a time where we're seeing the spread of COVID, of other sicknesses, that like maybe stepping outside and removing ourselves from situation is an act of care. It is an act of care for the more vulnerable. I think it's also about like not self-victimizing in isolation. Like sometimes, especially in the wintertime, like withdrawing is okay. It's okay to face isolation. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay to let yourself be outside of things for a moment. We are living in a society, and this year is going to feel, there's going to be a lot of pressure, I think, to get caught up in movements and swept up in things, but it's okay to be outside of things. And sometimes the best way to care for ourselves is to let ourselves be outside of things. What do you think?
I love that. I mean, this card makes a lot of sense to me. One of the things that I think about with the Five of Pentacles is how, and in the original card too, it's like snowy out, and I think there's a church behind them, which at the time that these cards were made, churches were often havens for people
Yes.
who needed it. That did happen. But there's kind of a sense of like that self-victimization that happens with the card where it's like, I am so destitute. No one is here for me. I have nothing. And yet, if you ask for help, it is there.
Yeah.
And I like that in that card too, that it's a little like, it looks like a little hobbit home, and I love it.
It does, yeah.
But, and like we know, hobbits are very hospitable. Although they do keep to themselves. Anyway, moving on. Swift move on.
Yes.
No, but I love that, like, there is a sense of like when you do feel isolated, you can knock on a door and you can ask for help, and you can like reach out to people around you.
Yeah.
And that is something that is accessible for you even in this card.
Yeah. It's intense though, because at this particular juncture, there is a very aggressive dog that's like, fuck off, and a huge padlock on the door. So it's like, but I also think that it's like, this card came up in a reading for someone recently, and it's like, maybe the things that you're being shut out of are for your best interest. Maybe a door is locked because God is opening a window for you. Just kidding.
Our God is, sorry, we reached that portion.
But not every rejection is harmful. Like maybe sometimes it's like, okay, I am being kept out of the situation because it wasn't in my best interest anyway. And yeah, I think it comes back to that like victimhood. Like, we don't need to have access to every door. There are spaces and places that are meant for us, that are nurturing to us. And, I think that you could even take this back to like trying to fit in places where you don't need to be trying to fit in, because that those people aren't your people, or I don't know. But I do think that it's like important to remember that this isn't a terminal, like you are forever excluded, but just think like maybe you're excluded because there's something better.
I think too, like it's interesting, like the dog and the padlock can also be representative of someone who is protecting themselves and
Mm-hmm.
protection. You know, we can protect ourselves in ways that are toxic, like building a wall at the border. Like, we don't have to be doing that shit. But
Mm-hmm.
we can also protect ourselves in ways that are just setting healthy boundaries. And it made me think about, like, you know, maybe you like go up to a door and you knock and you ask and you say like, hey, can I get this help? And someone says no. And then
Yeah.
the fives are simply like, they're the middle of the journey. You're right. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much more to look forward to. And sometimes I think we all have faced moments of rejection and isolation and, you know, feeling at a loss and, you know, like we don't have what we need. And those are just moments that we have to move through.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
also always think about with the Five of Pentacles, like how we do live in a really, like, we live in like a poverty mindset kind of world. And I think that it's about like money, of course, where we're just like, so many people are struggling and they're just like constantly like, I'm just on the edge of poverty and really like struggling with that, and not maybe recognizing the wealth of like relationships that they have. Like, you know, I just had this conversation with a friend where I was like, people love you. You're not going to be like, you're not going to be thrown to the streets the second you don't pay rent. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you go through a hard time financially, you have people who will take care of you.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's not true for everyone, for sure. But like so many times there is that like wealth sitting somewhere around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, even like poverty mindset in like relationships where we're like, oh, I don't have this kind of relationship in my life or whatever. And, you know, like really feeling sorry for yourself about that. And like, it's a way of victimizing yourself. Like, if you don't have a certain, you know, like a romantic relationship or something right now, like, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It doesn't mean that you are
Mm-hmm.
poverty stricken in love.
Yeah.
You still have relationships, you still have a life. Like, there's,
Yeah.
and to think to yourself that you're always like sad about this like one thing, you're kind of focusing in on what you lack. And it's hard, but gratefulness is a practice that makes people happy for exactly that reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm thinking about that tweet that was like, I regret to inform everyone that I've been waking up early and doing yoga every day, and it does in fact help with
Yeah.
my mental health. Like,
Yep.
it's one of those things where it's like, I get it. It's obnoxious when you're down and someone's like, what are you grateful for? Like, it can obviously be sort of gaslighty or whatever,
Yeah.
but it is true that maybe when you're really feeling low, to think to yourself, what am I grateful for? And you
Mm-hmm.
might like look around and see like, oh, actually I have so many things to be grateful for.
Yeah. I
So
love that
shut
you
up
bring
and quit your whining. No, sorry.
yeah. I love that you bring it back to like that scarcity poverty mindset, because it is a Pentacles card. So it is like very much tied into our like material experience. And so just, yeah, that's such a good reminder that we are conditioned to live in spaces of scarcity when scarcity is largely a myth. I also just want to point out that the couple in this picture, um, it's two femmes.
It is two femmes. I couldn't tell. That's so
I
great.
love this deck so much. It's so queer. I just love it.
So I have this Practical Witches spell deck, and I've pulled out the moon spells because of the Cancer moon. The sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so I've got a couple spells in case you are wanting to on this got Friday evening, or, you know, the moon vibes stick around for a few days. So fit it in where you can. Use lime LaCroix, like, do what you got to do.
Yes. Cheers.
But yeah, pulling a card and seeing what kind of lovely little spell we can have and enjoy. Ooh, okay. So this one is a little basket moon spell. It's just words on the other side. So just showing you the cute back of it. So it says, when the first narrow crescent of the waxing moon or basket moon appears in the night sky, which will be next week, or I suppose right after the full moon. When that appears in the night sky, place a green candle beside a white lily or freesia, Anoint the candle with tuberose or rose oil. Take a handful of seeds or nuts still in their shells and place them in front of the candle. Close your eyes and recite this out loud. Under this newest of moons, in Eden fair, I walk through flowers. In the garden of my desires, I light the flame of my mind. I plant the seeds of things to come. I love that for full moon. Usually we start planting of seeds for a new moon, but
yeah,
sometimes like certain seeds got to be planted whenever they're ready. That's reminding me of the conversation I keep having with a lot of people about New Year's resolutions. I had a friend today who was like, I'm too impatient for them. Like, if I want to change something, I just need to change it. And I was like, I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I like thinking about New Year's resolutions and being like, but I'll do it on January 2nd.
yes. Yeah. I've like seen, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No.
I've seen a lot of like folks talking about like New Year's resolutions, like take it or leave it, whatever. I feel the same way. I got really motivated early December. So most of what I've been working on since then. But there is a certain momentum at this time. And I understand that years, holidays, especially here in the US, are like mostly constructs, time is not real. But there is like a moment where everyone is collectively thinking about starting fresh. And I think that regardless of whether you observe the specific holidays or this specific metric or measure of time, that the energy of this moment is potent with collective, like, I get to start fresh. And that's cool. It's cool to cash in on that energy, regardless of how you observe time.
I agree. I'm all about it, but I also am fine with like setting a resolution and never doing it. Like my thing is like I'm kind of parable of the sower over here. I am just like throwing a bunch of seeds out there and we'll see which ones stick. No judgment. I don't even remember the things that I told myself I would do last year that I didn't do. I don't know. What did I say? I don't really remember. It's not on my radar. I don't care. It didn't stick. It didn't stick. But the ones that did stick, I'm like really proud of. I'm like, cool, I did it.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. As the Between the Worlds podcasters would say, take what you want and leave the rest. I hope you have a lovely, healing, and radically healing Cancer full moon. Let us know if you try out the cocktail. Let us know what bastard son you come up with. I can't wait.
Until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Cheers.
Cheers.